Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. This is the last of our summer break pods, so it's not news today, as you might expect. It's questions, and we recorded this on the 20th of August. So if there has been a big news story, we will catch up with that as soon as we are back next week. We are recording this, in fact, back-to-back with the one you listened to last week, but with a 5-minute break in between so I could have a bacon sandwich as well, because obviously all that talk of bacon sandwiches, Kieran, I had to go, but mine was the antithesis of yours. Mine was 2 slices of white plastic bread, 4 slices of bacon, little tiny bit of ketchup. Uncle Terry would not have looked down his nose at my bacon sandwich. I imagine the Baroness cuts the fat off your bacon, does she?
No. She cuts the fat off her bacon, and I eat it. I love bacon fat.
It's the best, isn't it?
The best recipe my old man ever gave me was baked beans cooked in bacon fat.
Ooh.
It is game changer.
Was he a cowboy, your old man? That's
well, Uncle Terry was more of a cowboy.
Regular listeners will know about my dispute with Chris Packham. The signs were probably there earlier in the day when I was sort of looking after him on this TV show, when he's made this announcement saying that if we could, there's cold weather coming up, we should throw our bacon fat out for the birds in the garden. It's like, whoa, Chris, I'll do a lot of things for this planet. I'm not sacrificing my bacon fat but obviously he takes these things very seriously. Questions, Kieran, and we've got some interesting questions today. And the first one comes from Jacqueline Hart. And Jacqueline says, with the World Cup stopping the domestic league for mid-November to around Christmas, does this mean there will effectively be 2 pre-seasons? If yes, would this be a decent additional revenue opportunity for lower division clubs?
Well, you're absolutely right, Jacqueline, in that there are 2 pre-seasons for clubs in the Premier League and the Championship, both of which are effectively going to go into hibernation during the course of the World Cup and then resume activities on Boxing Day. Boxing Day is always a great day for football, but can you imagine what we're going to be like after 4 or 5 weeks of not having the opportunity to follow our team? It's going to be even crazier than ever. But the matches taking place in League One and League Two are continuing. There's a full palette of EFL matches. There'll also, of course, be the first and second round propers of the FA Cup taking place. I know you disapprove of me sometimes going to watch other matches, Kevin, but I can't cope with 4 weeks in November and December without any football. So I will go to watch an FA Cup match or 2, I suspect. So therefore there won't be a pre-season opportunity for those clubs in those lower leagues because they're already playing Saturday, Tuesday. So there's no way that the manager would be keen to have a pre-season against a bigger club. And also, I think those bigger clubs, from what I understand, is that those players who are not going to the World Cup, they are likely to be doing going to Dubai or going to do some warm winter training with the rest of the squad in order to keep them ticking over there. And therefore, they won't necessarily be in the UK anyway.
I don't disapprove of you going to other games, Kieran. That would be full. I occasionally go to other games if they're available. What I disapprove of is you buying the shirt of those teams at the other games and brazenly parading yourself up and down what passes for a pavement in Sussex. Talking of other games as well, Kieran, I think we should probably mention this as well. It's been a bit of a hoo-ha, should we say, about the price that QPR are charging for away tickets.
Yes.
This season.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. the Premier League has had a ticket price cap of £30 now for 4 or 5 years. Now, the Football Supporters Association, whose views broadly align with ours on most things, they've had a 20s plenty campaign, but the Premier League says, well, 30s better than what we were charging in the past. So it does therefore seem strange that we've got clubs below the Premier League who are charging more than that. And also, as you know, I love going to Loftus Road.
Yeah.
It's a proper ground, and it was also the 100th away stadium that I went to watching with Brighton. So therefore, it's got a special place in my heart. And we celebrated with a 0-0 draw, as the way that these things should. As much as I love going to QPR, the view's not the best,
No.
To put it mildly. So to get £36 coming out of your wallet, plus the cost of getting down from Hull and Rotherham, I know that these are two clubs in particular that have voiced their dissatisfaction, does seem very harsh. At the same time, a big shout out to the people at Hull. They're running free coaches for fans who want to attend that match as a means of giving support to their fan base, and you've got to applaud the club in doing so. But it seems a daft decision by QPR. You're trying to attract people to come to watch your product, and charging prices which are, I think, difficult to justify, is not really the way to go about that. And credit to those QPR fans who themselves said, well, we're going to contact the club because we think it's unreasonable. And there's a danger of it becoming a tit-for-tat arrangement. Where Hull will say, well, you'll charge us £36, so we're going to charge you the same. And then you simply just get a race to the bottom. And it's the fans that lose out most of all.
Well, also, I'm sure a lot of our fans based in the rest of the country would agree with me. It's not the traditional London way, Kieran. The traditional London way is that you attract these people into your ground and then fleece them in there by charging three times as much as they would have to pay anywhere else in the country. So that's what worries me, Kieran, is it becomes a war of attrition. Is that the other clubs, not necessarily Hull and Rotherham, will say, well, sorry, QPR fans, but we're going to charge you 40 quid to come to our games. And it's the fans, because it's not, I think that's what Hull and Rotherham fans need to remember. This is not the QPR fans doing this pricing.
No.
The QPR fans will be just as dismayed as everybody else. Again, I don't know how many more times we have to say it on this pod. It's the people who don't make the decisions are the ones that get shafted. We have a question now, Kieran. I believe it's our first from Indonesia. And I hope, I have checked, and I think I'm correct pronouncing Michael's name correctly. It's from Michael Enrico Wijaya, who says he's from Indonesia. How nice to hear from you. And Michael has closely followed Tranmere Rovers since quite a big portion of that club was acquired by the Indonesian company Santini. Again, I love the reasons people have around the world for supporting clubs like Tranmere. Last season, Tranmere signed a deal to use Mills Sport Apparel, which is an Indonesian brand. What do you think of that deal in terms of value for the club, both in terms of sales and revenue?
I think this is a sign of the sort of the progressive nature of Tranmere Rovers in terms of how they are trying to compete in the world of football, and it's not from charging away fans £36. So what's happened here is that following this investment from Indonesia, what Tranmere are doing is they're giving something back. They're going out to Indonesia and they're giving expertise in sports science, coaching in different parts of the country. I think they're called the Wanandi family have invested in Tranmere in terms of buying an element of the club. And on the back of that, because there's been some, the fact that Michael has decided to take an interest in Tranmere, that's also come from some other fans as well. Indonesia is far bigger than I think people in this country realise.
Yeah, it's huge.
This Mills have decided that they are going to support the club as well. They can see the benefits back in Indonesia itself, What we've also seen is if we look at Tranmere, Tranmere had a kit provider who was Puma, and I like Puma kits. I think they've always been slightly edgy, slightly. We're not part of the elite sort of group of Adidas and Nike in the sense that, and they've always tried to be slightly a bit more left field. But that's good if you're one of Puma's senior partners. No disrespect to Tranmere here. Tranmere aren't. Tranmere have a loyal and committed fan base, and Tranmere is also an all-white kit, which again has a limit in what you can do in terms of that. So, by all accounts, the Tranmere Rovers they were disappointed with the white kit that they were getting from Puma, and Mills were given the opportunity to supply shirts on a more bespoke basis, and this resulted in what we refer to as a designed by you campaign, where Tranmere Rovers let the fans design the kits, and then they voted on the kit, which Mills then produced and supplied. And this won some marketing awards at the Northwest Football Awards last year. Oh. So it's a two-way relationship. It's a flexible deal. I don't think it's appropriate for me to quote the numbers involved. That's private between the club and Mills. But they're quite a big company in Indonesia because they actually make the national team kits there. So I think it's a sign of how to, all business success is built on relationships, and this has come first of all from Tranmere going to Indonesia, saying, right, we're going to do some soccer schools here because we're involved in this conversation. They've got some investment back. Now they've got this relationship with the kit manufacturer. I think it's sort of a template for how clubs need to think outside of the box to build their revenues going forwards.
Our next question comes from Sean Ford. And I have to say, Kieran, this is one of my favourite questions recently. Because, again, it's one of those where you think, that's a really interesting question. Also funny. Do footballers, asked Sean Ford, receive the same fringe benefits that normal employees get? Does Jordan Ayew get a 10% discount in the club shop? Can Danny Welbeck get a free coffee at the concessions? Does Ben Foster benefit from the cycle to work scheme? I would guess technically the answer is yes, but it's just the image of Jordan Ayew ambling his way around the club shop asking for a 10% discount. But I presume at a lower level, Kieran, some of these fringe benefits for the less well-off footballer would be most welcome.
Yes, they would. Things like health benefits are absolutely critical. It will all be detailed in the terms and conditions of the contract of employment. It doesn't apply on a universal basis. And here I give you the case of a Mr. Ibrahimovic, who when he was looking at his payslip. And I'm amazed that footballers bother to look at their payslips, by the way. He was at Manchester United. He looked at his payslip when he was at that club, and he noticed that there was a £1 deduction in his payslip. So, being Ibrahimovic, he phoned up at the manager and says, could you explain this? And the manager goes, well, I don't know. So eventually he ended up speaking to somebody at Manchester United. And by all accounts, Manchester United were at a match. And the previous evening, they'd all been located in a hotel, which is fairly standard. And Ibrahimovic had taken a bottle of fruit juice from the minibar. The hotel had charged the club. The club traced it back to the player and said, we're going to charge you £1. And all I can just say is, I'm just be grateful that he hadn't bought himself a pint at West Ham. because that could have proven to be very, very expensive indeed. And he in his most recent book, and I've read a couple of his books. They're not the standard football. I listen to Genesis and eat steak and chips type of book. He is entertaining. He's had an interesting and challenging upbringing at times, but he accused Manchester United of having a small and closed mentality, something which I'm sure the fan base would disagree with in terms of their perception of the Glazers.
Yeah, the real James Milner is actually a very funny, interesting chap, but the James Milner that we see on TV, I imagine that James Milner, he would ask for a 10% discount in the club. He knows what is in his contract, isn't he? He'll be taking a programme away for nothing on it. Oh dear! Well,
not we got the guard dog. Now opening the door to chase the postman. This is like a scene from a 1970s. Sorry about that, listeners.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It's literally like being in a 70s sitcom. I always, even as a kid, watching those programs and reading cartoons, I thought I've never seen a dog. I've never seen a dog chase a bike or chase a postman. I've never seen a postman retreating down the garden path with the bottom of his trousers bitten off. But apparently, no else.
And it is very weird because he knows the different footsteps, because we've got a gravel path and we've got a shared path, a shared drive with the next door neighbours. He can distinguish the footsteps of my next door neighbour and his wife, who are fine. Postman, he can tell, and he will go after the postman every single time. He was just sitting under the table, and as soon as he heard the crunch on the gravel, he was out there.
Well, it's the same with Boris Johnson and cars on gravel. That tends to get him out. I also remember 70s sitcom style. What happens when the vicar comes round or the chimney sweep? Because again, I remember watching the sitcom on telly with my dad, thinking, why do we never get a chimney sweep coming round, Dad? The vicar doesn't come to our house.
Our chimney sweep's great.
What?
He's brilliant. He's absolutely. We love him to bits.
Oh my God! I was not expecting the answer to be that. You've got a chimney sweep, have you?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got a chimney. You can't have a chimney without a chimney sweep, can you?
No, you can't, Kieran. You're quite right. I don't know what I was thinking of. Really, does he tap dance on the roof, Dick Van Dyke style? Charles Robinson has a question, and all I can say, Charles, is welcome to my world here. Charles Robinson says, I was attempting to explain to a friend the other day the financial shenanigans at Derby and was telling them, as best as I could, about player amortisation. Could you explain firstly what this actually is? I believe that the cost of a player is divided by the number of years that the player has on their contract, meaning that a player who costs 20 million on a 4-year contract is worth 15 million the next season, then 10 million the next season, and so on. So you have got a grasp of it, Charles. But my friend, says Charles, asked me how the current value of a player affects this. Is that simply irrelevant for the purposes of amortisation?
Charles, you are exactly right. The book value of a player in the accounts bears no resemblance to current value or market value. Because the way that it works under the accounting rules is that when you sign a player, you take the benefits of the player, and the benefits of the player, if the player is committed to a 4-year contract and you pay 20 million, you're effectively getting the benefits of, let's say they're playing 40 matches a season, you're getting the benefit of 160 matches worth of the player. So under the accounting rules, unless you can prove there is a genuine market for the player, then the amortisation is charged on a straight line basis. So you correctly said you sign the player for £20 million, and therefore you say it's a 4-year contract. So 20 divided by 4 gives us a £5 million amortisation charge each year. And that works fairly universally, but not totally universally. We of course have the Derby County issue. And the way that Derby County would have dealt with that is Derby said, well, we are going to use what we consider to be the market value of players as a means of determining their value and calculating their amortisation charge. So what Derby happened to do, they said, well, we signed the player for £20 million. At the end of year one, we think he's worth at least 19. So instead of charging 5 million amortisation, we'll charge 1. And in year 2, they tended to do the same. And in year 3, they tended to do the same. And the benefit that this gave to Derby County over the first 3 years in which they implemented this policy, it reduced their amortisation policy, based on my calculations, between 25 and 30 million pounds, which meant, of course, they could spend 25 to 30 million pounds on other things at the club, such as wages and so on. And the objective was to get promoted during that period. The trouble is, if you charge £3 million in the first 3 years of the contract, you've then got to charge 17 million in the final year to fully amortise the player. And Derby's response to this, or rather Mel Morris's response to this, was, I'm simply not going to publish any accounts. The argument that's put forward by both cases, and I've had, I think it's fair to say, disagreements with the likes of Nick DeMarco, who was, and I've got a huge amount of respect for Nick on all issues. He's saying, well, why can't we use market values? And my response is, well, I don't make the rules, but my perception of the rules is that unless there is an agreed market value of a player, you can't use it. What is the net value of a player who you've had for 12 months? What happens if the bit bobbins? Has his value genuinely been £90 million after 1 year? What Derby said, well, we're going to use transfer market as one of the main justifications of our market values of players. But then you've got to ask, well, where do transfer market get those figures from? They get them from the people that log into transfer market. So it's just random people around the world. They won't necessarily be watching the player, and the chances are they'll just be following somebody's on Twitter said, this player's worth a lot of money, in which case I'll go to transfer market and repeat that. So it's a flawed system. It doesn't represent where we are in the markets today, but the alternative is one which is very much open to manipulation. Now, I'm not saying that Derby did manipulate the numbers, but it just happened to coincide with a 25 to 30 million pound financial benefit as far as their FFP calculations were concerned.
So book value and market value are different things.
Yeah. And that's also the case for property. If you take a look at the Palace's property assets in the accounts, you've been at Selhurst for years and years, and that reflects the cost of building Selhurst at that time, plus any improvements that have taken place in subsequent years. But it doesn't reflect what Selhurst is worth in 2022, and that's just a flaw of accounting. There are one of many flaws that there are in accounting.
Okay, our next question comes from David Lork. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, David. If not, I apologise. David says, I'm a German living currently in New York doing a sport management master's, and I hope to re-enter the industry later this year. Now to the fun stuff, he says. As Kieran thought you'd just done the fun stuff. You're doing the sport management masters. That's the fun stuff. Since Kieran is a Brighton supporter, I was wondering if you could give some insights on Tony Bloom's acquisition of Royal Union Saint-Gilloise. How is that arrangement going to work?
Tony Bloom does have a significant investment in Union SG in Belgium, but he is not involved in terms of the running of the club. He's actually got effectively a business partner to whom he has delegated all of that responsibility. So whilst I think he's in daily contact with Paul Barber at Brighton in terms of doing X, Y, and Z, he is very much a hands-off approach with regards to the day-to-day running of Union SG. Having said that, Tony Bloom is, for people not familiar with his background, he operates an organisation called Star Lizard. Now, Star Lizard is effectively a consultancy for very, very wealthy people who want to place wagers on sport. And what Star Lizard do is they they crunch the numbers. They go through all of those Moneyball features, and we refer to algorithms at the end of the show when we're saying please give us a review. The number crunchers employed by Star Lizard are true mathematical geniuses, as is, I'm not saying because he happens to own my club, as is Tony Bloom. He is a ridiculously smart guy. He's a maths graduate from the University of Manchester, and he's just one of these people who are naturally brilliant in terms of being 4 steps ahead in terms of numbers. That's why he became a professional poker player, and that contributed toward. So he doesn't get involved with the club, but the numbers which are crunched by Star Lizard may or may not be, and I say that for contractual reasons, may or may not be potentially then taken advantage of by Union SG when they are recruiting players. So when Bloom bought Union, they were in the second tier of Belgian football. They then went on to win the Belgian Jupiter Super League last season, but that doesn't guarantee you participation in the Champions League, because they have this strange system that once the league positions are sorted, they then have a series of playoffs, and I think it's the winner of the playoffs goes into the Champions League. And Union, they played Rangers in the knockout to try to get into the Champions League group stages. They won the first leg 2-0. Rangers came back and won the second leg 3-0, and which was, by all accounts, from some of my Rangers fans, one of those nights in Ibrox. And you can imagine it being quite an emotional evening for all involved.
Now, our next question comes from Martin Coker. It's our penultimate question. It's a slightly morbid one, and it also will put Martin Coker ahead of the queue as prime suspect in any subsequent police investigation. Martin Coker says, I want to ask about Spurs ownership. What would happen if the current owner, Joe Lewis, were to pass away? I'm not trying to bump him off, but he's in his 80s.
Yes, indeed. Joe Lewis has been very successful from his upbringing in London. He's 85 years old, and he's a significant investor in a company called Tavistock. Tavistock controls ENIC, which in turn controls Spurs. Should Mr. Lewis pass away, and we wish him a long and happy future from the age of 85, then ultimately there will be he will have a will. It could be that there are succession plannings in the sense that the shares in ENIC, there could be a first refusal for those to go to Daniel Levy at an agreed price in respect of Spurs, or it could be that the shares will be inherited by his children, and then it's up for them to decide whether they want to continue that relationship by being owners, or do they want to relinquish control through a sale. So it's a private matter in terms of his succession, but he's again a very, very smart guy. He will have made these succession plans, and there will be, as always, an army of silver-tongued friends to make sure that they are applied to the letter.
Our final question, Kieran, comes from Mike Dunn. It's about a club we've talked about a lot, Newcastle. Mike Dunn says, after Mike Ashley closed all of Newcastle's club shops except for the one in the stadium, the new owners appear to be reversing this and are planning to open off-stadium shops once more, which must be good news for commercial revenue. My question, though, is around FFP implications. As spend on infrastructure is excluded from FFP calculations, does that include commercial infrastructure, such as a new shop, or even hotels and hospitality venues that in turn help generate additional income? And if spending on commercial infrastructure is not excluded, where is the line drawn, given that new stadiums have a host of such outlets these days?
Yep. Well, I think the good news, I think, Mike, from your point of view, is that all infrastructure spending is exempt from profitability and sustainability stroke FFP rules. So therefore, Newcastle can Newcastle can build as many megastores, as many hotels as they wish, and none of those costs will count against the club in terms of building up future revenues. in terms of Mike Ashley, over the Mike Ashley, I know he's not popular with Newcastle fans. He is a very successful retailer, and we've had a succession of questions here about successful individuals. Certainly, in terms of Sports Direct, it has been a very very lucrative business for him. And this brings us back to the issue of Newcastle United over the 14 years of Mike Ashley's ownership, commercial income during which was a pretty golden period for the Premier League. Its popularity and the TV rights grew at ridiculous levels. His commercial income went up from 26 to 28 million pounds over 14 years, which is actually below inflation during that period, which I think is indicative of there was a flawed strategy. Now, that could have been due to the deterioration of the relationship between owner and fan base. But I think it is certainly one area which the new owners are very keen to address.
Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, then that would be very kind. Go to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Normal service will be resumed after our summer break from the next pod. And in the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you very much, Patreons. Thank you for everybody else for the support for the show and the interactions that you have with us through email, through social media, and so on. If you want to support the club, want to support the pod through Patreon, that's fantastic. It's as little as £1 a month, or should I say £1.20 a month. Apologies for the VAT, completely outside of our control. There's another way of doing it, though. You can go onto your podcast app and you can leave us a review. You can leave us 5 stars. It really helps us in the charts. I think we're averaging 4.9 out of 5, which is
very good.
Which is very kind of you. But the other way you can do that as well. If you want to leave a comment, the comments don't count towards the charts. They don't count towards the algorithms that Apple and Spotify say. So you could even say, therefore, that you would rather have the show presented by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Emma Raducanu, which I think will be an interesting and unusual meeting of minds, and I'd listen to that personally.
Yeah, I believe Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is a Macclesfield fan, isn't he? I understand.
Is he? I didn't know that.
I think so. Yeah, I believe so. It's one of those things where he was on Soccer AM and they gave him a club and he quite liked the sound of it and carried on being a Macclesfield fan. So yeah, I have no news on who Emma Raducanu supports. It's probably Brighton, because she plays tennis. I don't know. That would seem
it's got to be Wimbledon then, surely.
Oh, yeah, fair point. Oh, yeah. Well done, Kieran. You've zinged me. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.